West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
In tonight's vice presidential debate, J.D. Vance had one goal: to try and clean up the mess left by his running mate after the first disastrous debate in front of 75 million people. It doesn't take long before you realize whether he was able to accomplish that goal. So first off, here's J.D. Vance trying to dance around the issue of climate change.
I think this is a very important issue. Look, a lot of people are justifiably worried about all these crazy weather patterns. I think it's important for us, first of all, to say Donald Trump and I support clean air, clean water. We want the environment to be cleaner and safer. But one of the things that I've noticed some of our Democratic friends talking a lot about is a concern about carbon emissions, this idea that carbon emissions drives all of the climate change. Well, let's just say that's true, just for the sake of argument, so we're not arguing about weird science. Let's just say that's true. Well, if you believe that, what would you want to do? The answer is that you'd want to reshore as much American manufacturing as possible, and you'd want to produce as much energy as possible in the United States of America, because we're the cleanest economy in the entire world.
He claimed that we need to reshore as much American manufacturing as possible and produce as much American energy as possible. And he's right. And that is exactly what Harris and Biden are doing right now. The current administration's created 800,000 manufacturing jobs, and the current administration is producing the most energy ever. The U.S. right now is the most energy independent it's ever been, including when Donald Trump was president. Meanwhile, if J.D. Vance is advocating for reshoring manufacturing jobs, great, but how does he square that with the fact that his running mate lost 150,000 manufacturing jobs when he was president? Walz, to his credit, also made another great point when it comes to climate change.
Senator Vance has said that there's a climate problem in the past. Donald Trump called it a hoax and then joked that these things would make more beachfront property to be able to invest in. But my farmers know climate change is real. They've seen 500-year droughts, 500-year floods back to back. But what they're doing is adapting, and this has allowed them to tell me, look, I harvest corn, I harvest soybean, and I harvest wind. We are producing more natural gas and more oil at any time than we ever have. We're also producing more clean energy.
And then, of course, if you're wondering why Trump and Vance are so willing to shill for big oil, well, you don't have to look far.
To call it a hoax and to take the oil company executives to Mar-a-Lago, say, give me money for my campaign and I'll let you do whatever you want.
Bought and paid for. From there, they delved into the issue of immigration, which of course is where we had the misfortune of listening to Trump's tirade about migrants eating pets. But it's important to note that the story was perpetuated by J.D. Vance prior to that. And of course, Vance's staff had already been told by the city of Springfield that it wasn't true, but still he said it because the point, according to his own admission on air, is that even if he has to create fake stories, it's worth it to impact the narrative. And so, of course, when asked about immigration, here's what Vance had to say.
Before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies. 94 24 executive orders suspending deportations, decriminalizing illegal aliens, massively increasing the asylum fraud that exists in our system. That has opened the floodgates. You've got to re-implement Donald Trump's border policies, build the wall, re-implement deportations.
Deport millions of people, including those who have protected status and who are legal immigrants, without any details about how he would actually do it. Because after all, why worry about details when you have no intention of actually following the law? In reality, the reason there is chaos as far as immigration is concerned is expressly because Donald Trump killed the border bill that would have actually mitigated those issues, a point that Tim Walz made here.
Most of us want to solve this, and that is the United States Congress. That's the Border Patrol agents. That's the Chamber of Commerce. That's most Americans out here. That's why we had the fairest and the toughest bill on immigration that this nation's seen. It was crafted by a conservative senator from Oklahoma, James Lankford. I know him. He's super conservative, but he's a man of principle, wants to get it done. Democrats and Republicans worked on this piece of legislation. The Border Patrol said, this is what we need in here. These are the experts. And the Chamber of Commerce and the Wall Street Journal said, pass this thing. Kamala Harris helped get there. 1,500 new border agents. Detection for drugs. DOJ money to speed up the adjudications on this, just what America wants. But as soon as I was getting ready to pass and actually tackle this, Donald Trump said no, told them to vote against it because it gives him a campaign issue. It gives him what would Donald Trump talk about if we actually did some of these things?
In fact, the moderators did offer a minor fact check about the legal status of migrants in Springfield, which sent Vance into a tailspin.
Just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well, Margaret, but
thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important
we're
because
going to turn out of the economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
the rules were that you guys weren't going to
we're-
fact check, and since you're fact checking me,
Notice how he complains about being fact-checked. When your entire platform is predicated on lying, I suppose you're going to get upset when you get called out for lying. And then, in what I believe was one of Walz's best moments of the debate.
Now, you made a question about experts, said this. I've made a note of this. Economists can't be trusted. Science can't be trusted. National security folks can't be trusted. Look, if you're going to be president, you don't have all the answers. Donald Trump believes he does. My pro tip of the day is this. If you need heart surgery, listen to the people at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, not Donald Trump. And the same thing goes with this. And I ask you out there, teachers, nurses, truck drivers, whatever, how is it fair that you're paying your taxes every year and Donald Trump hasn't paid any federal tax in the last 15 years, and the last year as president?
The only thing worse than having a megalomaniacal narcissist in office who thinks that he can fix everything alone is having an incompetent megalomaniacal narcissist in office who thinks he can fix everything alone. Trump has no actual record to run on, just a lot of branding. But dig 1 inch beneath the surface and you'll realize that there's nothing there. On abortion, here's what Vance had to say.
First of all, I never supported a national ban. I did when I was running for Senate in 2022 talk about setting some minimum national standard.
Vance says he never supported a national ban, but he supported a national minimum standard, otherwise known as, you guessed it, a ban. You can't make a national minimum standard of 6 weeks or 8 weeks or 12 weeks and think that you are tricking anyone into thinking that that's somehow not a ban. The fact is that Vance is arguably the most extreme on this issue. He himself called for a, quote, end to abortion on his website, and Walz was quick not to let Vance explain away this issue.
The fact of the matter is, how can we as a nation say that your life and your rights, as basic as the right to control your own body, is determined on geography?
And here's a particularly bad issue for Republicans, the issue of gun violence. Here's Vance's big solution.
What do we do about the schools? What do we do to protect our kids? And I think the answer is, and I say this not loving the answer, because I don't want my kids to go to school in a school that feels unsafe or where there are visible signs of security. But I unfortunately think that we have to increase security in our schools. We have to make the doors lock better. We have to make the doors stronger. We've got to make the windows stronger. And of course, we've got to increase school resource officers, because the idea that we can magically wave a wand and take guns out of the hands of bad guys, it just doesn't fit with recent experience. So we've got to make our schools safer.
The old harden the schools trope in response to a question about gun violence. Right, that's the answer. Turn schools into prisons, ripe with guns and metal detectors, because God forbid we actually tackle the root of the problem. And Walz, to his big credit, pointed that out here.
But that's not far enough when we know there are things that work. I've spent time in Finland and seen some Finnish schools. They don't have this happen, even though they have a high gun ownership rate in the country. There are reasonable things that we can do to make a difference. It's not infringing on your Second Amendment. And the idea to have some of these weapons out there, it just doesn't make any sense.
And it just got better for Walz as we then moved into healthcare. Vance claimed that Trump, quote, salvaged the ACA. That didn't exactly sit too well with Walz.
All right, here's where being an old guy gives you some history. I was there at the creation of the ACA. And the reason it was so important is I come from a major healthcare state, home of the Mayo Clinic, home to Medical Alley, 3M, Medtronic, all of those. We understand healthcare. It's why we're ranked first on affordability and accessibility and quality of healthcare. And so what I know is under Kamala Harris, more people are covered than they have before. And those of you listening, this is critical to you. Now, Donald Trump all of a sudden wants you. Go back and remember this. He ran on the first thing he was going to do on day one was to repeal Obamacare. On day one, he tried to sign an executive order to repeal the ACA. He signed on to a lawsuit to repeal the ACA, but lost at the Supreme Court. And he would have repealed the ACA had it not been for the courage of John McCain to save that bill.
And look, Republicans, as you all know, have spent the last decade trying to repeal the ACA. Trump himself literally tried to repeal it, and but for John McCain's famous thumbs down, he would have been successful. Trump is not the savior of the ACA. He is not the savior of healthcare in this country. He literally tried to destroy it. And of course, it couldn't get much worse than this answer on Vance's vowed refusal to certify the election unless Donald Trump wins.
Senator Vance, you have said you would not have certified the last presidential election and would have asked the states to submit alternative electors. That has been called unconstitutional and illegal. Would you again seek to challenge this year's election results, even if every governor certifies the results? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, Nora, first of all, I think that we're focused on the future. We need to figure out how to solve the inflation crisis caused by Kamala Harris's policies, make housing affordable, make groceries affordable, and that's what we're focused on. But I want to answer your question because you did ask it. Look, what President Trump has said is that there were problems in 2020, and my own belief is that we should fight about those issues, debate those issues peacefully in the public square, and that's all I've said, and that's all that Donald Trump has said.
He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship.
And look, of course Vance won't admit that Donald Trump lost in 2020 because that lie right there serves as the foundation for not only Trump's efforts to massage his ego as far as his 2020 loss is concerned, but also the foundation for his efforts to cry fraud in the upcoming election. If Vance admits that Donald Trump lost, then the whole facade goes away. And so instead, he has to help Donald Trump continue this bit because it's all that Donald Trump has left in the event that he loses this election. He will never admit fault, and he will never claim that he lost the election.
We all know who Donald Trump is. He's told us, and as Maya Angelou said, believe him when he told you that. His first inaugural address talked about American carnage. Senator Vance tonight made it clear he will stand with Donald Trump's agenda.
Overall, this debate put on full display the extent to which J.D. Vance is little more than a slicker-talking proxy for the exact same dangerous, draconian, backwards agenda that Donald Trump tried to thrust onto the American people. Whether it's on healthcare, on gun safety, on reproductive rights, or on democracy itself, Vance offered little more than the same unpopular policies as Donald Trump himself. Americans have already made it clear that they don't want it from him, and they're not going to buy it from his running mate either.
It is Wednesday, the 2nd of October of 2024, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. And we will be seating you directly for our especially special daily special Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Will no one rid us of these meddlesome priests? Yeah, I would like to have a separation of church and state once again. So quaint. Such a quaint idea. All right, well, I don't think it's happening anytime soon, and I'll tell you why. Opus Dei. And I'm a Catholic, too. Well, was baptized a Catholic. I don't know how much of a Catholic I am these days, since I'm not Opus Dei. And I think, apparently, those are the only Catholics that count here in America. So, I'm not one of those. Yeah, liberation theology. That's what I always like. That's what got Saint Romero killed. That's right. To the least of these. How we treat the least of these is how we want to be treated. You know, like the golden rule. So apparently J.D. Vance wants to deport himself. I guess. I love how he said that it was poison. The poison brought across the border by those rapists and murderers. Yeah, that almost killed his mom. Except for one thing. She was a nurse, and she got addicted to prescription drugs that she got out of a box. And on the side it said Purdue Pharmaceuticals. So let's be clear. All right? I just love that. And also, somehow, you and I are competing with that immigrant, that dirty immigrant, working at Burger King for, the $700 to $1.2 million homes. I had no idea. Jeez, Burger King pays that much that they can do that? Yes. It defies everything that we know. Okay? And yet, old JD apparently was so slick, that made up for all the lies. Media loved it. Oh, he was so slick. I love how when they interviewed focus groups right after the debate, fully like 90%, there was one that was like 6 out of the 7 asked said that Tim Walz won the debate. And then in others, people said that they changed their vote. They were undecided. And what made them want to then vote for the Harris-Walz ticket is because J.D. Vance lied about January 6th. Favorability is through the roof for Tim Walz, except when you turned on the media this morning, all they could talk about is like, oh, well, he stammered when he was confronted with the lie that he was in China like a couple of months before Tiananmen or after Tiananmen, I think is what it was. He was off by 2 months for something that happened 35 years ago. Instead of June, he was there in August. Come on. Okay. I think you could surmise that maybe the media is in the tank. Unbelievable. And this is like CBS that posed that question. And, okay. Granted, to their credit, they did throw in one blatant fact check that J.D. Vance just could not stand. How dare you? You said the rules were you were going to fact check my lies. Okay. Well, that's an ad for the Harris campaign right there. So to their credit, they did that. And they actually slipped in a couple of other fact checks, more in as posing a question. So that was interesting. But what's up with this gotcha thing about you lied? You lied when you said you were in China. You were there 2 months, different than what you said 35 years ago. You said you had shumai for breakfast when you really had the steamed pork bun. No, I had the shrimp. No, it was the pork bun. 35 years ago. All right. And yet, J.D. Vance couldn't say who won the election 4 years ago. Almost 4 years ago. He gets a pass. Because he was so slick and polished the way that he was able to lie with such flowery language. Oh. And I got to tell you, The reason the guy's wearing the beard is that it really does hide the paunchiness. He's 40. I thought the guy was older. I know I'm old now, and everybody seems like a kid to me, but I thought he was older than 40. What a square. Yeah, well, he's been hanging around with Peter Thiel. I went through the whole, slander yesterday about what's going on with Peter Thiel. And I kind of think that maybe old JD's got a lot of baby oil. Mm-hmm. Yep. P. Diddy. Okay, well, we all know that old Tim Walz did pretty damn good there. I don't know. I watched the whole debate. They said that he faltered during the first half of the debate, then got his bearing. I don't know. Sure, it was two different styles, but I thought old Tim was pretty wonky and at the same time down to earth. I liked it. I didn't really see this so-called faltering. I think the format was odd because it was supposedly left up to Tim to fact check. Well, would he be allowed to have a device so that he could wiki something? I don't think so. So the supposed befuddlement in the beginning is that there was a fire hose of lies from the get-go. And CBS preempted their own journalistic responsibility. Yeah, well, they did have online fact-checking. If you were watching it and following on your computer at the same time. And yet even then, there were so many lies, they couldn't keep up with it. By the time they fact-checked something, it was down the road. It was a gish gallop of effing lies. That, like all these school killings is because the cartels are bringing guns into the United States. No, it's the other way around, mofo. The Mexican government has been suing the U.S. government and U.S. gun manufacturers for the flood of guns smuggled into Mexico. And the cartels are using them. They want to stop the flow of guns into Mexico so they can get a handle on their crime problem. And what's holding up their ability to affect those lawsuits? Oh, well, we have these product liability cutouts for the gun manufacturers that they can't be sued. It would be a violation of the Second Amendment if a murder weapon manufacturer was sued. All right. Sounds to me like maybe they ought to get Interpol involved. I think. Anyway, it was a fire hose of lies. But it wasn't meant to necessarily change the minds of MAGA or even change the minds of Democratic voters who are going to vote for Harris Walz, who might be a little soft on that. It wasn't about any of that. What it was, though, is I think a clear indication that they're not worried about how incompetent, aging Trump has become, because they got this guy. He's only 40. Just saying. Okay, it's a gambit, isn't it? I've heard some rumors floated, as soon as, this is the hypothetical, as soon as MAGA wins the presidency back, JD and the rest of the Republican Party are going to invoke the 25th Amendment and kick old Donnie to the curb, and then they got JD. I don't think they have to even do the 25th Amendment. You know? There's enough crazy-ass MAGA people that want to pop them off for any kind of slight because they're all, I don't know, kind of messed up. The crazy has become even crazier. It's the same thing that happened to the Nazis. They purged themselves throughout their reign of power. The Night of the Long Knives was really a purge of Nazis that might become a little too powerful and contest the Führer. It's a common tactic. I mean, the Mongols did it, the Romans did it, everybody did it. You take power and you take out those who are the most have the most ability to contest your power. They're your friends. They're the ones who helped you come to power. But they're also standing in the wings, right? Right. So, J.D., Teal, Singer, Leonard Leo, etc., 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 etc. They've been playing the long game. And they've had farm schools that they put people like J.D. Vance through. Now, granted, Peter Thiel, that whole connection is a little bit different than the Heritage Foundation and Federalist Society. But in recent times, there's been, a clear handshake among those individuals and groups working for a common good. Yeah, common good. Alrighty. Well, what do we have in store for you here in the Bistro Cafe as we begin here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? A California right-wing militant has been hit with additional charges in a courthouse bomb attack that injured 5 people. Apparently there's a few more arsons involved in all of this. A North Carolina town that produces quartz needed for a wide spectrum of tech products was destroyed by Helene. Remember when JD said, well, we don't manufacture anything here. We don't manufacture chips. We have solar panels. We need to do the solar panels here. Well, here's an example of, tech being built here, pal. Anyway, a Pennsylvania county manager was sued over her plans to end the use of drop boxes for mail-in ballots. Oh, a county manager. Are they voted in? I don't think so. After the break, we move to the chef's table where Germany arrested a woman who passed airport details to a suspected spy for China. And with falling energy prices providing some of the needed relief, inflation in Europe has fallen below 2% and opens the way for faster rate cuts. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Remember to follow me on social media at Justice Putnam, and you'll have quick access to the show notes and links diaries that are posted 10 minutes before showtime. And that way you'll have quick access to the actual reportage by the actual reporters. This first offering here, speaking of which, in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays is by Jaime Ding from the Associated Press. A California man has been hit with additional charges in a courthouse bomb attack that injured 5 people, including for 3 local arson fires. Nathaniel McGuire, age 20, he is not mentioned in this particular article, but when we reported on these bomb attacks and the arrest of this Nathaniel McGuire, age 20, we discovered that he is a white nationalist with quite extreme views, and his attacks were meant to attack the U.S. government. So I just wish that they would bring this stuff up. But anyway, he was charged by federal officials last week with maliciously damaging a building with an explosive. Santa Barbara County prosecutors are charging him with 10 counts, including 2 counts of attempted murder, use of an explosive device. Excuse me, just got a pop up here. How dare them? With the intent to murder, use of an explosive device with the intent to murder, and carrying a loaded firearm. He is also being charged with arson of forest land in connection with 3 fires that occurred on the outskirts of Santa Maria, a city of about 110,000 in California's Central Coast region, that officials say were set in preparation for the courthouse attack. In other words, while first responders are headed out to the woods, or, well, the hills, that's when he bombs the courthouse. It is not immediately known whether McGuire had an attorney for his local charges. His federal public defender declined to comment on his federal case, and his family did not respond to calls for messages or comments. McGuire was arrested on September 25th at the Santa Maria courthouse, where he was about to be arraigned on an illegal gun possession charge when an explosion damaged the building and injured 5 people. Authorities said McGuire threw a bag into the courthouse lobby that exploded, and he left the building on foot. He was arrested as he was trying to get into his car, which was parked nearby. Authorities said they later found ammunition, a rifle, a bomb, fireworks, and 10 Molotov cocktails inside the car, and other materials used in making explosives during a search of McGuire's home. In a federal court filing, federal authorities said McGuire told law enforcement after his arrest that he had gone to the courthouse planning to kill deputies working at the security desk. Authorities said he told them he planned to go back to the car to get several loaded firearms and re-enter the courthouse to kill a judge. At his arraignment last Friday, he had an outburst where he yelled about world events and blamed the U.S. government. Well, he blamed Joe Biden. He said he had no rights and was censored from speaking out. "You guys are the real criminals," McGuire shouted, appearing visibly distressed as his defense attorney tried to calm him down. McGuire is being held without bail in federal custody. After his federal case, he will be transported back to Santa Barbara County to face the additional charges. Staff at the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. 2 North Carolina facilities that manufacture the high-purity quartz used for making semiconductors, solar panels, and fiber optic cables have been shut down by Hurricane Helene with no reopening date in sight. Sibylco and the Quartz Corp. Both shut down operations in the Appalachian town of Spruce Pine ahead of the storm that swept away whole communities in the western part of the state and across the border in East Tennessee. The town is home to mines that produce some of the world's highest quality quartz. With increasing global demand, Sibylco announced last year that it would invest $200 million to double capacity at Spruce Pine. Since the storm, the company has simply been working to confirm that all of its employees are safe and accounted for, according to a statement, as some were unreachable due to ongoing power outages and communication challenges. Please rest assured, the statement said, that Sibylco is actively collaborating with government agencies and third-party rescue and recovering operations to mitigate the impact of this event and to resume operations as soon as possible, the company wrote, obviously to investors. The Quartz Corp wrote that restarting operations is a second order of priority. Our top priority remains the health and safety of our employees and their families, the company wrote. Associated Press staff brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Residents of a northeastern Pennsylvania county sued to overturn a local official's announcement that she will prevent all 4 of its drop boxes from being deployed for use by those voting by mail and absentee ballot in the November 5th election. The lawsuit in Luzerne County argues county manager Romelda Crookamo lacks authority for statements made last month that the county would not use drop boxes because of, quote, purported safety and security concerns, end quote. Drop boxes are used to hand over completed ballots by those who don't want to put mail-in ballots through the mail. The voters who sued said the Luzerne County Board of Elections and Registration plans to deploy 4 drop boxes as it has in other recent elections. The board in February voted down a proposal to eliminate all drop boxes, their lawsuit says. The lawsuit accuses Crookamo of violating state election law, and it claims her policy will lead to irreparable harm to the voting rights in Luzerne. The plaintiffs want a county judge to stop Crookamo from implementing her decision. In an email seeking comment, Crookamo wrote yesterday, Tuesday, "I do not engage in comment during litigation." Messages seeking comment were left with 2 of the 5 members of the Election and Registration Board, which is also a defendant in the case. Now, Wiltold Walzak, legal director for the ACLU of Pennsylvania, said in a statement Crookamo had no authority for what he called an end run around the Board of Elections' decision to continue offering Luzerne County voters a safe and easy option to vote by mail. And we hope the court will quickly restore the 4 drop boxes. Voters and the nonprofit civic group In This Together NEPA Inc., which is also a plaintiff, argued there have been no substantiated cases of abuse or fraud involving drop boxes in Luzerne County. They said the drop boxes have been monitored by camera. The Times leader of Wilkes-Barre reported yesterday, Tuesday, that Kokomo has said she does have the authority, as part of her duty, to oversee personnel and the security of county-owned properties. Well, everybody is the master of their own fiefdom, I suppose. But that also means that we are going to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, David Cronenberg, Move Over. If body horror isn't your thing, steer clear of The Substance. Director Carly Forgeet is a fan of King Cronenberg, and his influences on this one are apparent. However, unlike her idol, Forgeet is focusing on a very real horror: female aging in a society obsessed with youth. Here, our protagonist, the wonderfully named Elizabeth Sparkle, played by Demi Moore, is a former actress turned TV fitness show host. Elizabeth is unceremoniously fired on her 50th birthday because, as she's told by her male boss, once a woman is 50, she no longer, quote, has it. After being involved in a car accident, Elizabeth learns about a new life-changing procedure involving the substance. Her life certainly has changed after taking it. She literally, and in a grisly fashion, becomes two people. The new person, named Sue, played by Margaret Qualley, is a younger, hotter version of Elizabeth. Although the two beings are separate, they are one person, and neither can survive without the other. However, that's quickly forgotten once Sue steps into the role of Elizabeth's old job and tries to live life to the fullest. Casting Demi Moore, an actress well known for facing misogyny in the 90s and who's been vocal about body image and disordered eating issues, and who by all accounts looks amazing for 62, is nothing less than brilliant. Arguably, Moore gives the best performance of her career here. There's a real vulnerability on display, and depth best shown when Elizabeth is preparing for a date but can't escape the image of her other self, Sue gazing out at her on a huge billboard. While The Substance may not be for everyone, its nuanced message about the pressure on women to remain perpetually young-looking is something that should resonate with half the population, and maybe far more. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
I'm probably okay to have one more drink before I drive home. I'm probably okay. I open the window to stay alert. Probably okay. I just popped some gum in my mouth.
Step out of the car, please.
I probably made a mistake.
Probably okay isn't okay when it comes to drinking and driving. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
He seems sorry.
We very clearly told him not to look up there.
I'm honestly impressed that he was able to do it.
Right? What, did he balance on that big chair?
Yeah, I mean, I guess he'll just know what his gifts are this year.
I really thought we had hidden them well.
If they can find their presents, they can find a gun.
911, what is your emergency?
Every day, 8 kids and teens are unintentionally killed or injured by loaded and unlocked guns. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and End Family Fire.
We're the Goo Goo Dolls. We're fortunate that our daughters have what they need to grow and learn. But that isn't the case for nearly 13 million kids in the U.S. that struggle with hunger.
Childhood hunger is a heartbreaking reality that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and provides it to families and children in need.
You can help kids in need in your community by visiting feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
This fall was the first college entering class since the Supreme Court in 2023 threw out decades of precedent and prohibited colleges from considering race as a factor in admissions decisions. So, what happened? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. At Harvard, the percentage of first-year black students dropped from 18% to 14%, a 4% decrease, or a 22% reduction in the number of black students in the class. At MIT, the percentage of first-year black students dropped from 15% to 5%, a reduction of 2/3. At Brown, from 15% in the overall class to 9%, a 40% decline. At Columbia, from 20% to 12%. And at Amherst College, from 11% to just 3%. Some elite colleges have reported that they did not experience a decline in black enrollment. Yale at 14%, Princeton at 9%, and Caltech at 5%. But there appear to be many more elite colleges that have. As the Harvard Crimson editorialized, a sustained decrease in Harvard's black population will intensify race-based inequality in a nation already highly inequitable, and will shut out talented students who face far higher obstacles, and will increase the isolation of black students on campus, and will deprive entering students the many well-documented benefits of a diverse learning environment. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU, because freedom can't protect itself.
You're listening to the American Democracy Minute, keeping your government by-in for the people. We've reported for months now on challenges to undated or misdated mail-in ballots in Pennsylvania. After the Pennsylvania Supreme Court overturned a state court ruling allowing counting of those ballots, the ACLU is now taking a parallel case to the U.S. Supreme Court. The ballots in question are from otherwise eligible voters whose mail-in ballots were received on time and were correct, except for a missing or incorrect date on the outer envelope. Pennsylvania election law says they must be disqualified, but in 2022, as many as 10,000 Pennsylvania voters were disenfranchised by the rule. Two parallel cases in state and federal courts were filed on behalf of some of those voters, but the state case hit a dead end on September 4th when the Pennsylvania Supreme Court rejected the case on a technicality. The federal case, NAACP v. Schmidt, lost on appeal in March 2024 and was denied a rehearing. Then, September 25th, the ACLU asked the U.S. Supreme Court to take the case. The ACLU argues that the materiality provision of the 1964 Civil Rights Act prevents ballots from being invalidated for trivial mistakes, a voter suppression tactic used in the Jim Crow South. Whether the U.S. Supreme Court's majority takes the case and whether it would rule before the election is an open question. We've linked to more on the case at AmericanDemocracyMinute.org. I'm Brian Beal.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1949. That was the day Americans awoke to fears the nationwide steel strike would spread rapidly to include key fabrication plants. 500,000 steelworkers had joined 400,000 coal miners on strike the morning before. The miners resolved to defend their $100 a month pension, instituting what John L. Lewis called the no-day work week, emboldened the steelworkers to walk out of the mills. Within 24 hours, 96% of all steel production in the country was completely shut down. United Steelworker contracts were due to expire on the 15th, but the writing was on the wall. The mill owners decried anything close to mine pensions as nothing short of socialistic and refused to budge in negotiations. United Steelworkers President Phil Murray thundered that those companies that failed to agree to demands for non-contributory pensions and insurance would be shut down. But militants warned that President Truman's fact-finding board had already watered down strike demands. The president's board had been established to put off 2 previous strike deadlines. The guidelines it issued only encouraged steel magnates to stand tough against United Steelworker demands. These included a 30-cent raise plus increased company insurance and pension contributions. Now, it had become a defensive struggle over whether steelworkers would have to begin contributing to health and pension plans through wage cuts. By the time steelworkers ended their strike 42 days later, they had won the $100 a month pension minus what they would receive from Social Security, and they had to begin contributing to a health insurance plan with no wage increase at all. Still, workers celebrated that they had successfully defended the United Steelworkers against the all-out union-busting drive.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 48 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting highs in the low 80s, winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour, clear skies overnight with lows in the mid-40s. Winds light and variable, then mainly sunny tomorrow with highs in the mid to upper 80s, winds light and variable. Ragweed pollen is rated high here in our hamlet of Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is in the moderate range at 54 parts per million, so it's gotten a little worse. And that daytime UV index is also in the moderate range, and it ticked down, as we reported yesterday, down to level 4. So still take care, though, it's moderate. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.16 inches. Visibility is at 9 miles. And relative humidity is at 83%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. And that is the Weather Underground. London is 59 degrees and mostly cloudy. Paris is 58 and cloudy. Rome is 75 degrees and mostly cloudy with a severe rain advisory. Kabul is 68 and clear. Hong Kong is 67 degrees and cloudy. Tokyo is 78 and mostly cloudy. Auckland, New Zealand is 58 with light rain. San Francisco, California is 71 degrees sunny with a small craft advisory. Chicago, Illinois is 62 degrees and sunny. And New York, New York is 65 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. At the World Desk of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche Here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. German authorities arrested a Chinese national accused of passing information on a major air freight hub to a man who is suspected of spying for China, prosecutors said yesterday, Tuesday. The woman, identified only as Yaki X, in line with German privacy rules, was arrested in the eastern city of Leipzig on Monday. She is suspected of working for a Chinese intelligence service, providing information on flights, freight, including military equipment, and passengers. The suspect works for a company that provides logistical services at sites, including the Leipzig-Halle Airport, prosecutors said. The airport handles both passengers and freight, but is known principally as a cargo hub. They allege that between August of 2023 and mid-February of this year, she repeatedly passed information to Jean Gao, a German national who was an aide to far-right European Parliament lawmaker Maximilian Krah, and was arrested in April. That, prosecutors said, included, above all, information on the transport of military equipment and of people with connections to a German defense company, which they did not identify. A judge on Monday ordered Yaki X held in custody pending a possible indictment. Her apartment and workplace were searched. Prosecutors have said that Gao was accused of working for a Chinese intelligence service and of repeatedly passing on information on negotiations and decisions in the European Parliament. They allege that he also snooped on Chinese dissidents in Germany. In a separate case in April, 3 Germans were arrested on suspicion of spying for China and arranging to transfer information on technology with potential military uses. At the World Business Desk of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Inflation in the 20 countries that use the euro fell to 1.8% in September, below the European Central Bank's target of 2% for the first time in more than 3 years, as falling energy prices gave consumers relief from a burst of inflation that at one point reached into double digits. Yesterday's official figure, that was Tuesday, coupled with an anemic growth outlook, could pave the way for faster interest rate cuts from the ECB, which has already trimmed rates twice. Inflation fell from 2.2% in August, according to the European Union Statistics Agency Eurostat. The last time inflation hit the ECB's 2% goal was in June of 2021. When it was 1.9%. Economists have started to consider the possibility of a rate cut at the bank's October 17 meeting. A few weeks ago, the expectations were that the central bank would wait until December before lowering borrowing costs again for consumers and businesses. The bank must juggle the need to make sure inflation is under control at 1.8%. which would mean waiting longer to lower rates against concerns over slower economic growth, which would argue for swifter cuts. Higher central bank interest rate benchmarks combat inflation by raising rates throughout the economy, making it more expensive to borrow and spend. That reduces demand for goods and pressure on prices, but that also slows economic activity. The ECB, U.S. Federal Reserve, and other central banks rapidly raised rates to combat a burst of inflation or price gouging, that broke out as the economy rebounded from the pandemic, straining supplies of parts and raw materials, and after Russia invaded Ukraine. Now, those rates are being scaled back. The Fed cut by an outsized 0.5 percentage point at its last meeting. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.